you don't.
Good.
Say so.
Good. Because any minute somebody might knock at the door to put in windows and my dog will go nuts.
Okay. If you stay on mute, you can use the space bar, press and hold the space bar, and that will make you unmuted until you release the space bar.
I thought, yeah, that's what this is the first time, so I just wanted to make sure I did it correctly. Okay, I'm good.
All right. Well, me too. Here we are at 10 o'clock, so we might as well get started on. Thank you for taking the time to join us. We obviously have a small group this morning. I heard from Frank a little while ago that he would not be able to join the meeting, reasons unspecified. And I heard from Art Jones last week. His wife is having some health difficulties, and he's attending to those this morning. And I thought that was the higher priority than
Sure.
seemed to me. Okay, let's begin. Joe, I'll start with you and ask if we've met all of the requirements for the Freedom of Information Act with this meeting.
We have.
And the other question I guess we ask is, can we officially say that we have a quorum?
I see 3 members present out of 5. That constitutes a quorum.
Very good. Thank you very much on both of those. Important because if we hadn't had a quorum, we would not be able to move on to item 1, which is approving the minutes from our March 2020 meeting, our last meeting, unfortunately. I hope you've had a chance to take a look at those. I made one slight addition that Ed suggested for me. So we got that in there. And at this point, I'm going to ask if I can have a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the March meeting.
All right. Liz, do you want a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. It keeps everything all legal. I don't think there are any other votes or decisions or anything else required for the rest of the agenda. It's more information than anything else. And I just thought it would give us an opportunity today to talk about some things that have been going on around us that we haven't had a chance to talk about in a few months. I want to start with an item that really isn't even on the agenda. I thought kind of an afterthought.
Yeah.
Sir?
Just procedurally, it didn't call for a vote.
Oh my goodness. Everyone in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Thank you, Joe. The item I thought about would be kind of go through an update on where we are on the whole pandemic issue. And by now, I think you all probably know that the South Carolina DHEC, scdehc.gov website has issues all the statistics for the state, county, and even down to zip code. You got to be careful with zip code because, I mean, look at our own zip code, 29455. If there, let's say, for the sake of discussion, 100 cases reported in our zip code, are they all here? Are they all on Kiowa? Are they all on Wamala? Are they whatever? So we don't get any more granular than that. From a hearsay perspective, I can say that I personally have not heard of any cases being reported on Seabrook Island. And I've only heard of one case, and this was back in March, I think, on Kiowa that involved, I think, an employee with the grounds crew. I'm not sure if that was correct, but it was an employee of some sort. And that's the only thing I've heard. I would have to say we have been reasonably well protected, or lucky, or whatever word you want to use, down here. It does appear, however, that the number of cases being reported statewide is on the rise again. We were looking at, we had plateaued, to use the big word that everyone wants to use, in I did something wrong. Sorry. There I go. Plateaued in April, but now with the reports that we get on a weekly basis or more often, it looks like the cases are on the rise again. So I'm, in summary, I don't think we're out of the woods on this thing by any means whatsoever. I personally don't think we will be for quite a while. What quite a while is, you can go there. I like to think months. I think it'll be well into next year before we even start talking about an active vaccine. And it appears that a vaccine might be the only solution for getting us out of this entirely. But it's going to be a while.
Can I share
Nope.
something quickly? Is that all right?
Go ahead, I can barely hear you.
Oh, I said, can I just share some data quickly?
Absolutely.
Let me try to pull it up on the screen share. Can you see that?
Yes.
So this is the daily statewide new case counts from SCDHEC. And so these are going all the way back to March through yesterday. I plotted them all in Excel, and I also did a 7 the dotted line in the background, that's the actual number of new cases for any given day. And then the bold red line is the
Joe, you're cutting in and out on audio. I don't know what that is.
I think somebody's getting some feedback. See if I can. I don't know. Let me try again. Okay, so on the data, you'll see starting from mid-March or so, you see the steep rise. And then we get to about the second week of April, and that's about the time that the governor put the home work order into place. And I've highlighted that in yellow. So from April 7th through, I think it was midnight or 12:01 on May 4th, you had the stay-at-home order. So you can see basically the curve was effectively flattened. The average 7-day case counts went from about 195 on April 7th down to 163 on May 4th. Everything was looking good. On May 4th, the Homer work order went away. And for about 2 weeks, the data stayed relatively flat. You can see basically from 163 to 164 total average case counts. Since then, since the middle of May, it's been on a fairly steep upward trajectory. The last week or so, we've had several new daily records. I think capping out, the highest one was over 500, 513, I think it was, on over the weekend. And so basically, we've gotten to the point now where the average has more than doubled since we've come out of the statewide Homer work order. So clearly, this thing is not going away. We're seeing some escalation, and what DHEC has been saying on some of the conference calls, yes, some of that is from increased testing. But they've also been warning recently that some of that is also from higher community spread. We don't know if there will be any impact from recent protests and other gatherings and things that have been going on, but clearly there is a fairly significant upward trajectory over the last uh, two weeks or so.
So did they make any projection whether they thought that we would see results of the protests like in a week to 2 weeks?
We have a up to 14-day incubation period. So, I mean, it's not instantaneous. I think those started not this past weekend, but the weekend before. Um, Not just here in Charleston, but around the state, around the country. Um, Thankfully, a lot of the people that you see out there are wearing masks, but certainly not everyone. Um, so I would guess probably in the next week to 2 weeks, you may see that number start to creep up even more. But it's not just protests and activities like that that'll drive these numbers. I mean, I know just personally, anecdotally, if you're out at the store, at the restaurant, I mean, you see a heck of a lot more people kind of back out and about. Most of the businesses are back open. Tourism's back open. The beaches are open. So, I mean, there's a lot more people pretty much anywhere you go. So all of those things, you're creating more exposure, and very high likelihood those numbers will continue to rise. So I know you've heard some people say, and including a member of our council, somebody walked up and said, hey, aren't you glad this thing is over? This thing is not over. We're continuing to see the numbers rise. Basically, all the restrictions that started in late March, early April, basically bought some time. But you can see we were flat for a period of about 6-7 weeks or so. But clearly it's picking right back up where it left off.
Thanks, Joe. So, as I said a little while ago, we might wait for a vaccine, but we wait and wait and wait. And with this thing, personal practices, social distancing, wearing masks is appropriate, hand washing, all that stuff, still the best solution for preventing the spread of the virus. So that's basically all we can do.
Good. Good. Because any minute somebody might knock at the door to put in windows and my dog will go nuts.
Okay. If you stay on mute. Are we recording the meeting?
I didn't say that. That's not me. My thing was on mute.
It's what was said when we were starting the call.
Yeah,
Interesting.
why would that come back around?
I have no idea, but
I'm
it's
just
a
sitting
real
here.
good lesson. Don't ever think anything you write is wrong.
I did. Oh my God.
I've lost the meeting.
Are you still there?
Oh,
I've
we're
lost
here.
the meeting. Wait a minute. Oh, I got it. All right. One other item, and Joe might be able to help us out on this one as well. From a town perspective, we have reopened, perhaps I should say, but we're restricting the number of people who can come in and where they can go once they are in. Basically, come in, do your business, and leave. Thank you very much. The restrooms are not open to members of the public coming in. As you can see, we're using facilities like Zoom to do our meetings, as opposed to even a group as small as ours getting together in a conference room, which I would much prefer. But why do something like that when you really don't have to? It's not essential for us to meet face to face. So anyway, that's what we are doing from the town's perspective, and that's really all I had to say about updating on the pandemic. Anyone has anything else to add to that? Questions?
No,
Okay, then let's move on to item 2 on the agenda, status of upcoming events. And this is pretty quick. both Disaster Awareness Day, which was scheduled for later this week, and the fireworks, which was scheduled for July 4 holiday, have been canceled. We're just not going to do that. It just, the fireworks was a really a dreadful thing, but really an easy one to do. You can't get that many people there and back safely, how they congregate safely during the event. It would have been a nightmare. Think about the shuttle buses we've used in the past to get people from places like the High Hammock Villas right down the street from me over to watch the fireworks. We need to start shuttling them today if we're going to get them all there in time for the display. So that was an easy one. The Disaster Awareness Day was also, I guess, kind of an easy one too. That was one where, again, if you go to what's essential and what isn't for conducting business, for staying as we are, then I don't think the Disaster Awareness Day would have fit that. Would have been a good thing to have, would have been timely. Here we are in the first week of hurricane season. We've already had 3 named storms. Ooh, I don't know what that means. Did everyone get the item I sent that was
Yes.
in the Post and Courier yesterday? And today, if you get the paper, there's an editorial about the lane change, about kind of a little history of what the effect of it and how it's going to be more positive now with the changes they've made. But the real influence to me, or the real effect rather coming out of that editorial to me, is leave early. And they're going to institute these lane changes early enough so that people can start moving out early enough ahead of a possible storm. This pretty much in reaction to the virus. You give people the opportunity to go where they want to go, need to go where they feel safe to go, etc. So I thought that was pretty good. And I also renewed my subscription to the Hurricane Wire, which is a link in the article I sent out, in the item I sent out yesterday. It's another source of information. To me, you can't have too many sources of information, and you just go through and pick the ones you want to rely on. So there's that.
Skip,
Yes, sir.
question, has Saboa canceled the July 4th parade?
I have not heard about that yet. I know there's a lot of discussion about it. I haven't heard that they have done that yet.
Okay,
Yeah, I had emailed Heather about a week or so ago, just to ask if they had any update. And she said a decision hadn't been made yet. They were discussing it.
The other item I wanted to discuss under upcoming events, not really an event, but it's something that we have discussed in the past in our meetings, and that's an ordinance regarding e-bikes that was due for second reading in, I think, at a March council meeting. And with the council meetings being canceled, this ordinance never made it to second reading. At the May council meeting that we had a week or so ago, we looked at that ordinance again, brought it up for the second reading, and instead of doing that, we decided to table the ordinance, the motion for the ordinance entirely. Joe, take a couple of minutes to explain to the rest of the folks what the effect of that is, what that really means, that we've tabled that.
When you table the ordinance, basically you just vote to set it aside and take no further action on it. The reason for that was the change at the state level essentially rendered our ordinance moot. The state, what our ordinance would do basically would say that a class 1 e-bike, which is a pedal assist, can't go over 20 miles an hour, that it has to have operable pedals, that the motor only kicks in when the individual is pedaling the bike. What our ordinance was going to do was say for a class 1 e-bike that meets those criteria, it would be allowed wherever bicycles are allowed and under the same rule and regulation. The reason why we were looking at doing that was because the state statute had no provision with e-bike. As we were going through the process, the state adopted or amended the state statute basically to do what our ordinance was going to do, to treat them as bicycles and under the same rules and regulations. The town basically had a couple options. One, you could adopt the ordinance, which really didn't need to be done because we follow the state statute. And once the state updated theirs, then by virtue of us following the state, ours was also updated. Council could have denied the ordinance and basically just with finality said, okay, we're going to vote it down, and that's for it. The other option would be to table it, which is basically just saying we are no longer going to consider this. You're not approving it. You're not denying it. You're just setting it aside, and it would stay aside indefinitely unless somebody wants to vote to bring it back up consideration. So now it's basically just been laid on the table for no additional consideration unless somebody makes a motion to put it back.
Okay, it's a good segue into item 3 on the agenda, and then we'll kind of combine that with the e-bike ordinance with what else we talk about in item 3, which is listening to the concerns that people have about the town pathway. And now by the town pathway, that's the stretch of sidewalk essentially, or paved area from the gate up to Latella in Freshfields. Many sections of which we took time to repair because of the root growth and other damage that had occurred to keep that a safer way to travel and walk. We received emails from some people, some is a kind of a loose term there, expressing safety concerns or concerns relative to safety about, number one, speed, how fast people are biking on that. I don't think they were worried about how fast people were walking or jogging there, so it had to do with bikes. And about the visibility, some of the areas where some of the brush has grown up, or blind turns, particularly the particular concern, there are 2 spaces, one down near the realty office across from the entrance to the marina, but a little closer to town hall. And the other main one was up at where the path makes a turn to go up toward Latella if you're headed toward Freshfields. And if you've noticed back in there, there are 3 large utility units in there that belong to, I believe, Berkeley Electric. So we're not going to address the speed issue. We could put up speed signs. These are things that council has considered, a speed limit sign. But if we do, we have no idea how we're going to enforce it. We've had volunteers from the community say, hey, I'll help enforce it. Well, that's the last thing we want, to tell you the truth.
Vigilantes.
Yeah, man, that's the last thing we want for sure. And I personally, I really don't know how much of an issue it really is. There are some people that can bike very, very fast, and they're going to have to take responsibility for their actions, period. So I came back to, I guess, mostly the visibility issues for us so far. I went out the other day, the other week, and walked the path with my iPhone and took a video of it so that we could take a look at that. I think Joe's got that and can show us some. Believe me, I'm not Cecil B. DeMille with this thing, so I just wanted to get give you an idea of what I think people are worried about when it comes to the visibility. So, all right, here we go. There's a beautiful picture of the path. This is before I decided, oh yeah, I need to not only look at the path. All right. And this is the area where we're approaching, going toward Seabrook.
Seems sufficiently wide open through here.
Right. This is going toward Seabrook and toward the area of, I think, biggest concern, and that's up by the utility boxes. And this is just for everyone's familiarity with what people might be referring to when they say, hey, with our blind spots, you got to slow down for the blind spots, and here's where we're approaching them.
Now approaching the traffic circle area.
Yeah, I actually talked while I took these things. I can't believe it myself. One of the issues we have as we look at all this is
Yeah, it seems sufficiently wide
what
open.
right of way, and that might not be the right word, but what can we do within the space that is basically ours? As it turns out, the space that is basically ours, or the town's, is the pathway, the width of the pathway. So we would need the permission of the property owners on either side to go in and remove bushes. I don't know if we need to do it to trim bushes. If they're overhanging the path, we can probably take care of that. We can't do anything to move the utility boxes there on the left.
Just to see around the electric boxes.
That's one of our repaired areas. And through here, if we did some thinning of
The
trees and bushes, that might improve the visibility. I didn't go much farther than this.
that concludes this video.
Hello? Oh, once you get to the straightaway, it shouldn't be a problem, but I have two suggestions. One is in the blind areas before them is to do some painting on the path. I don't know, maybe a dividing line or something, or a warning. And the other thing is on Captiva Island, it's a 2-lane road and there's a lot of vegetation, there's no shoulders, and they use those fisheye mirrors on the blind spots, and they do work, because you see something in that fisheye mirror, whether you're even conscious the mirror is there or not, if you see something move in that mirror, you're immediately aware that somebody's coming around the curve that you can't see.
Good suggestions, both. We have, I believe there's an engineer coming out to look at some other related work. And we're going to ask, what's Paul Ford? Is that his name, Joe?
Yeah, Paul Ford from Revere Group.
We're going to ask him to take a look at it and see what suggestions he has. I believe the mirror is one of those, but if it's not, I will make sure that he does get that as one of our suggestions. That's been, people on council suggested the same thing.
Yeah, I talked with Paul last week, and we were looking at the aerial, just talking about some of the key areas, and we're looking on both sides of Seabrook Island Road. And obviously, he hasn't been out yet to look at them, but he said just looking at them, the design doesn't appear to follow AASHTO, which is the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials. Guidelines for visibility. So he said typically you wouldn't want to go in and do throughout several different options, and center line striping was one, mirrors was one. If there are some areas where there's debris and stuff which is blocking visibility, that was another one. But yeah, he's going to go out and do the entire length. Bring us back some different options, and recommendations, and one we will likely have to consider is the pathway on the other side of the street, the smaller, the old bike path. Um, that is not even a regulation size bike path. Typically, you want it to be at least 10, preferably 12 feet in width. I think the other one is maybe 4, possibly 5, but I think it's 4.
Yeah,
That may be another question. Do you want to even restrict bike traffic on the smaller one as well? So Paul's planning to, once we sign a work order, he'll come out and he'll look at both of them and give us recommendations and costs.
How about some signage reminding bikers of the fact that there are walkers on the path, and to let them know when they're coming upon them?
Yeah, we did talk about maybe some targeted locations where you have the blind curves. And I also, just to throw it out, I have a request for a legal opinion into the town attorney, asking, one, if we have the authority to limit speed, and two, if we do, who has the authority to enforce it. I believe that a law enforcement officer would have to enforce it, but I don't know that with certainty. That's why we asked for the legal opinion. I can tell you right now, the sheriff's department's not going to be setting up speed traps on a bike path. I mean, we just know that.
No, no.
So alternatively, we could look at, I don't know that you necessarily want to have signage along the entire pathway,
No, no.
but at some of those locations, as you're approaching a blind spot, it could say, blind spot ahead, reduce speed, those type things. So, but all those will be on the menu of options that our consultant will be looking at.
okay, I don't think that we would have any real difficulties getting easements or permission from the property owners to do some things along the pathway that is not within our jurisdiction. But the more we can do without having to even go that route, the better. Trimming back and so forth. And you can see right here in the still frame, we've got the 2 pines that are right there that would be, you would think anyway, perfect spots for putting out the fisheye mirrors that Liz talked about just a minute ago. So we're waiting to get more information after Paul's been out. Joe, what's his company again?
Revere Group. It's the same company who served as our traffic consultant for the senior living facility. They were our independent reviewer of the traffic study and the designs for the curb cut for the senior living facility. I will say, since we have it up and we're talking about, some of the brush and trees and those type things, basically our easement is essentially the width of the pathway. So in order to go through and remove that, I think we're going to have a couple obstacles. Number one is basically behind here, there is a pump station at Freshfields. And so, I mean, that's kind of heavily buffered by design, because you don't want to be going down looking at a pump station. So I don't see getting very positive response if we come in and say, hey, we want to open that up so people can see around that corner, when that's actually screening the pump station. The pump station's also actually in the town of Kiowa. I mean, if that was going to be done, not only would we have to work with the property owners, we'd have to work with the town of Kiowa Island as well. And then the other thing is, you saw up a little bit further up, pull it up here. I mean, there's a blind spot right here. I mean, that's electrical equipment. That's Berkeley Electric. Those aren't going anywhere. So I think we really have to look at, the alternatives, whether it's striping, signage, mirrors, those type things, and that's probably where the best options lie.
Okay. Any questions,
Nope.
suggestions, other thoughts about the bikeway? Okay. Then I'll move on to the next item, assuming I can bring up my screen to there it is. All right. All right, and that's kind of a recap or review of the Disaster Recovery Council meeting we had back on May 8th. When I put this thing together, I had intended and hoped that we would be able to review some of the things we had done and were doing and could be doing as we were in the middle of a pandemic that would provide material to update our CEP. If you've looked at the CEP, you can see that the section on pandemic is basically one page. And none of us, at least I can say for myself for sure, have ever been involved in something like this. This is the hurricane that doesn't go away. This isn't the thing you can evacuate and run away from until it's safe to come back. The warning signs are all there, but it's, the response is, I don't know, just you've got to take on, again, as I said earlier, the personal responsibility of doing the things that you think are necessary. You're not doing them for yourself. You're doing them for the protection of others as well. I mean, that's why people wear masks, not because they want to feel safe, but because they want you to be safe as well. Anyway, in looking at the report that our consultant Scott Cave sent to us afterward, thin is probably not really as good a description as I'd like to use, but that's what I will. There wasn't anything of any real substance that came out of the half-day activity, at least for the CEP. Now, I think there were some entities, some planning and discussion across the entities, across the town, the club, Camp St. Christopher, the POA, the Merchants Association, et cetera, that happened that had not been happening up to that point. Everyone had been kind of discussing things within their own realm, if you will, which they needed to do anyway. I mean, the town makes its plans for reopening or what they're doing in reaction to the pandemic without respect to what the other entities in the community are doing. And they should be doing the same. They have to decide what their guidelines will be for proceeding either with reopening or not reopening, whatever it is. But it was nice, I thought, to have people sharing those ideas more openly, that maybe somebody picked up, oh, wait a minute, I hadn't thought about doing that. And so that was kind of what I was hoping secondarily to get out of it. And I think to some extent that happened. There was more sharing of information as a result of having called the DRC meeting than there had been up to that point. I did send a copy of Scott's report out, I believe, to you a few weeks ago, maybe. And any reaction from anyone that you?
Well, I thought, getting back to the CEP, it'd be a good jumping off point, but I think we would have to embellish certain points in that to make a good pandemic section in the CEP.
There was, go ahead, Eddie.
No.
Okay. There was one really good piece of work done, and that was the procedure that our town administrator put together first for closing and then second for reopening town hall. And we've passed both of those on to Scott as items that can be included into CEP. Because those are all pretty well detailed steps that people can follow for their own purposes as they need to. So we thought that was good. And Joe, thank you for that.
Skip, I took notes during the meeting, and I'm not saying they're great or anything, but I would be willing to give those to Joe so that he maybe picks from those some other points. If not, I can just put them in my file.
I don't see how it could hurt.
Okay, I'll get them to him.
And I'd ask you to copy me so that I could take a look at them along with that.
Well, they're handwritten, so I'll make copies of them.
That's all right. That's good. Thank you. I think that pretty much covers what for the Disaster Recovery Council. And it kind of leads me to the next topic on the agenda, because you say, gee, what's next with respect to the CEP and so forth. And we've kind of hit a stall point with our consultant, Scott Cave, who back at the beginning of the year or late last year, sold his consulting business to Verizon. And and Verizon has been more than happy to continue that business here in the Low Country, the area that Scott worked in. One of the provisions turned out that Verizon wants to use a local company to be the contract or work administrator for the administrative arm for what Scott will do for us. And the company that has been chosen to do this by Verizon is called E-Group, small e group, Group. And we have been expecting a proposal from them. They're changing their approach. Scott did everything basically on an hourly. You know, he would keep track of the hours that he spent on various activities, and he had an hourly rate, and he would bill us with that, and we would pay him accordingly from the town. The new approach is more of a flat fee for services. I think I sent you an attachment as part of the materials for the meeting, what we got from E-Group. And I kind of looked at it as an online order form. I'll take 2 of these, 3 of these, 1 of these, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, and it seems kind of simple in its approach. And in one respect, it's a good planning tool. If we think we're going to have 2 DRC meetings, for example, over the year, then we have an idea of what it's going to cost or what it should cost. We have not finalized anything with E-Group yet. The mayor and Joe and I are looking at what we got from E-Group, and we basically have put it so far into a standard proposal information that the town is more familiar with. Clauses, indemnity, insurance, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of things that might not apply to this particular case, but ought to be part of a contract anyway. So we're looking at that. We're also looking at how the rates really relate to historical. The point being that we can't get really a whole lot more done on, for example, the immediate thing, updating the CEP, until we've got this contract in place. One of the questions that I had when we had a conference call with the E-Group people a little over a week ago now. And we had a number of questions. I asked to make sure I got a clarification. E-Group is not expected to provide any expertise. They are not the content experts. They, as I said earlier, they're just the administrators of whatever contract ends up coming out between us and essentially Verizon. So I wanted to make sure that we weren't all of a sudden going to get Bill Pill from wherever to come in here and start giving us instruction on what we can do for hurricanes and start leading group doesn't know anybody. You know, Scott will continue with us. He knows us. And that part is all very positive. We just have to iron out some of the details, and they're still open at this point. So the agreement is still in process. And as soon as we get something settled and agreed upon, then I'll certainly let you all know. Go ahead.
Skip,
Yeah,
Kiowa was also utilizing Scott, right?
correct.
Have you had any discussions with your counterpart over there about how they read this new scenario?
I have not. I think, Joe, have you talked to Stephanie at all about this?
I have not either.
Okay. And I'm not aware that the two mayors have talked about it either.
Okay, well, it'd be interesting, just for point of information, to see what their thoughts are.
Yeah. I'll make it a point to talk to that person.
Are there any other alternatives to Scott for similar guidance and information?
Oh, I'm sure there are any number of companies and individuals that might be willing to jump in and start filling that role. Lack of familiarity with what we do and how we do it is, I think, the biggest, that would be the biggest drawback to that. But I'm certain there are other people that we could consider.
See, at some point, maybe for the immediate future, in light of what's going on, we go ahead and, the town board will negotiate the arrangement with E-Group, Verizon, et cetera. But then maybe in a year, if we look at some of the others and see if there is anybody out there that could do this job. See, giving them a trial, to me, I'd only do a 1-year contract. And, if all of a sudden, we're not getting from Skip what we got, or, the arrangement is cumbersome, or, maybe it's time to see what's out there.
Good point. As I said, I I got it clarified from the E-Group people that they do not expect to be subject matter experts on this. So I wouldn't necessarily turn there. In fact, their emphasis as a company is much more related to IT and IT activity. And I think there's a caution light there that we need to observe on that point, that they might be after another piece of business from the town that I'm not so sure the town is willing to enter into. But that's for another group to decide.
Right.
Any other comments, questions about where we're going with the status of our work with Scott and the E-Group people? Okay, that brings me up to any old business, any stuff that we've been kicking around for a while over the last 3 months that we haven't really put to bed or put away, or
Are there any contracts, Joe or Skip, that are coming up for renewal that we're gonna have to do RFPs on that you can think of off the top?
I guess I'm thinking of our debris removal people and Phillips and Jordan, I guess, and some of the others. And I don't know that we need to renew any of those contracts.
Okay.
I think I think we've reached longer periods with those. I'm not sure, but that
Okay.
we should check. Joe, what do you think?
Well, we just did Phillips and Jordan fairly recently, so that one's still good. We're in our final 2-year renewal with Rostan. That's the independent debris monitor. That one was signed in 2014 with an initial term of 3 years. There was a 2-year renewal in 2017, and the final 2-year renewal was in 2019. So that one will expire in that's the only one
I lost your audio. Last thing I heard was that one will expire, and then you went flat for me, dead.
in about 15 months, September of 2021.
Okay.
We would have to do that one probably next spring.
Next spring. Right.
Did we not at one time recently, in the last 6 months or so, put together a list of contracts and expiration dates? Why is that kicking around in my head? A lot of room up there.
I have, well, all the contracts we put in SharePoint. I don't know that we have a list of expiration dates, but all the contracts themselves are in our SharePoint.
Okay. And we just did meet with the monitoring group a few months ago.
We met with Phillips and Jordan. I don't remember. I may not have been there. I don't remember meeting with Ross.
Oh, that was Phillips and Jordan. I thought there's a group that does the monitoring as well of what goes in and out. And that's a separate group from Phillips and Jordan.
Yeah, that's Rostan. That's the one that expires next year.
Rostan. Okay. I knew we had met with somebody and that we met with them as well. All right. Any other comments, questions, suggestions, ideas? Liz, your dog has been very cooperative and I appreciate that. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, then it only asks for me to remind you that our next meeting date is scheduled for July 13. It is likely to be another virtual meeting, as I suspect many of these will be from now on. So please put that on your calendar and let's see if we can't get a few more people here next time. And with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are
Aye.
adjourned. And thank you all for calling in. I really appreciate it.
Have a good
Take
day.
care, everyone, and be safe, please. Be safe. Take care now.
See you later.
You too.
Bye.